Yep, that's right. In the words of the comparably immortal Slim Shady, guess who's back? Back again. I have said it in the past, but I do feel the need to reiterate it now. When I sat down 2 years ago to write Ela, there were absolutely no plans whatsoever for Lucius Varus to become a recurring character. He was destined to be a one-off, a bit like Freddy the Flying Fright in Covenant, or Gordon the Gruesome Golem in Animus. We get a hint at his backstory, we send him to the bottom of the Atlantic, and it's game over. But no, you guys, you're the ones. You all had other ideas. Pretty much every other message I got in relation to Ela was a message saying, is Lucius really dead? Is Lucius going to come back up to the surface? Are we going to find out more stories about Lucius? And the answer was no, we weren't. I had a format I'd evolved that I was rigidly sticking to. I had a rough production schedule, and that was that. But the messages didn't stop coming. And so when I eventually got around to writing Extirpate, I finally relented. And thinking of doing a backstory for Blight anyway, I had a look online to see if there was a Roman footprint at Monte Cassino. And there was. And the rest, as they say, is history. I found myself trying to explain to people on occasion that I've got a relationship with Lucius now. And when I say that, I'm only half joking, because he's become very hard to live with. Having, with pretty gleeful abandon, hinted at loads and loads of gruesome historical events in his past now, I've got to try and stitch them together convincingly, because I've got to look at each one and see how it would influence or undermine new ones. I don't feel like I can just pick him up and then drop him down at any given gruesome part of history, because I don't think that would be convincing. So now I've had to evolve a roadmap to see if he moves on from somewhere, where does he go? Why does he go there? And where would he go from that point onwards? In one sense, he's a misery tourist throughout the ages, but in another sense, there needs to be a reason why he's ended up where he has. Then there's also the small issue of his powers. There is now a set backstory in relation to how he's acquired this curse. I'm not going to tell you it, but I have teased about it in this episode. The full explanation will be revealed further down the line. And that in itself is now making it a little difficult to retcon how he was initially presented. I've been asked if he's a vampire. The answer is no, he's not a vampire. He's not a werewolf. He's not a skinwalker. He is immortal, and consuming human flesh helps him regenerate. He's not impossibly strong. He's not psychic, and he's not telekinetic. He's also not insane. He is how I believe somebody from an already corrupted social background like ancient Rome would react to immortality as it goes along. Throughout the years, he's done it all. If you can think of a horrible crime or misdeed, he's done it. Whatever extreme gluttony or extreme sexual excess, he's done it, and he's bored now. When he kills, it's not simply about eating and surviving, because he could have voluntarily stopped that and ended his life centuries ago. In a way, killing's the only enjoyment he gets out of life now. And in this episode, ATTACCARE, I wanted to convey that he's lived quite different lives and quite personas as he's gone along. What would an ancient Roman make of 20th century Italy? Would a former soldier always end up going back into a military life? is he even capable of making friends with someone, and not eating them? As for Dawn and how he ties in with Lucius, there's clues there. I think there's gaps you could fill in, but at this point, I'm not saying anymore. Like a lot of the things that end up in these episodes, I genuinely had no idea Italy had invaded Libya in 1911. Most of my passion for military history means I don't tend to look at much before 1939, to be honest. But Italy's claim to Libya dated back to the Congress of Berlin in 1878. As the Ottoman Empire had started to subside, European powers had looked at their former territories, and it had been decided that Italy could lay claim to Libya. And for many years, they didn't bother. It wasn't until about 1908 that Italian politicians became obsessed with telling the public that Libya was a land of wealth and resource, and hoping that an easy military victory would keep them in power. Though the way it's depicted here by me would suggest that they fared badly, the reality is the invasion was a success, and it took the Italian army 6 weeks to annex Libya. They landed a force of about 100,000 troops with supporting cavalry and artillery, and they made relatively light work of the native population. There were a couple of counterattacks, and these were organised by local militias, tribes, and Ottoman agents. Ultimately, though, they weren't successful. There were setbacks, though, and the massacre at al-shatt is one of them. As in the story, the 4th Battalion of the 11th Bersaglieri Regiment was at al-shatt. They'd been stationed there as part of the outer defences of Tripoli, and in the morning of 23rd October 1911, they were attacked in force by a combined group of Turkish and Arab soldiers. There were 500 Italians in the village, and about a third of them were killed outright. And it turns out they were the lucky ones. 290 survived, and they were immediately herded into a local graveyard, and they were tortured, and they were murdered. And only 3 escaped to get back to the city to explain what happened. Their fates were pretty horrific. I'm not going to describe them. I would direct you to Wikipedia. Other search engines are available. And there's some articles in there that can explain exactly what was done to them. The regiment itself survived the conflict. It fought for the Italians in both world wars, and it still exists today. It's part of a wider armoured element of the Italian army. And of all the people who could have commissioned a monument into the incident, it was Benito Mussolini. He built one in 1932, and it's situated in Rome near the city walls. The particularly horrible nature of this incident did seem to be the perfect place to put our travelling serial killer. But it was only when I looked at that side by side with the Teutoburg massacre, I was struck by the parallels. In both cases, you've got an arrogant Italian Roman government forcing an occupying army onto a more primitive race and allowing their young soldiers to be killed in the process. And it's also true that in both, the undoing of that army was caused by elements of skullduggery and underhandness in the rebellion they faced. At Teutoburg, it was a turncoat Roman ally who organised the Germans, and in Libya, it was elements of the dying Ottoman Empire that did it. But Lucius, he survives, he has his revenge, he moves on. Where to? Don't know yet. I am toying with the idea of doing a timeline video for him next, similar to the one I did for the Ghoul back in World War I, John Gregory. We'll see. People didn't react particularly well to the fact there was no voiceover for that, but I might just be stubborn, stick to my guns. If it feels like I'm moving away from the channel's original format, it's because I am. The video I posted about HMS Dasher last week has been hands and away the most successful of late. This suggests to me that my audience is drawn to the factual videos more than the story ones, so I'm probably going to have to do more, which I think is largely due to the fact that most of the audience have come via bedtime or wartime stories. So if there are any bizarre and factual events from military history that you want to see condensed down into 10 minutes, just get the idea across to me. I'll have a look at it. I'm open to most things. The more bizarre, the better. I also want to try and do some more hybrids, which are short stories and testimonials. And the reason for that is that I can get Sean or Mikey to do a quite good one-shot art image, put it on social media, and hopefully pull people across. So I'm thinking like the Sea Witch in relation to that. Got a couple more ideas like that. The only other thing to say before I go is that around October, November time, there might be a little bit of a slowdown, possibly even a full shutdown in relation to the channel. The reason being I've got an exam that I've stupidly agreed to take at work, and I will need to study for it. If I can do both, I will. If I can't, then I'll have to slow things down. Anyway, as ever, I don't do this for me. I do this for you. I hope it's still good for you guys. I hope you're still getting something back for it. And if you are, please give me your feedback, give me your comments, share the stuff. I will see you next episode round. Goodbye.